If you want to get better at Call of Duty, you need to adjust some of your settings. Your graphics, controller, and interface settings are all very important items you'll want to tweak in Call of Duty Black Ops 6, especially for multiplayer. We've been keeping an eye on community chatter about the best configurations, and after putting a bunch of them to the test, we've landed on a few recommendations that will help you get a boost to your FPS performance, help you aim down sights faster, and offer a smoother overall gameplay experience, which is key if you want to dominate in PvP. Here are the best settings for Call of Duty Black Ops 6 multiplayer. First, let's talk about graphics, which is mostly relevant to PC players, but we'll also cover off on console settings. Feel free to jump to that in the timecode listed in the description. On PC, these are our recommendations for the best FPS, FOV, and latency, but you still may want to push and pull a few of these levers for yourself, like some people prefer a little bit less FOV. That said, this should work for most computers that meet the recommended specs for Black Ops 6. If you don't see some of these settings available, make sure you've gone into the multiplayer menu, as on the default menu, some are not available. An important setting is display full screen exclusive. This is the version that will give you the least input delay, give your game prioritization over other programs, and gives the game complete control as to how it displays on your screen. Long story short, you should always pick this if you're looking for the best FPS for your game. Your display monitor would be your monitor, display adapter would be your graphics card, screen refresh rate would be the max refresh rate of your screen. This improves your input latency again and gives you faster response time. Display resolution 2560 by 1440 is the sweet spot if you're able to do it. 1080p will also work here if you're on a lower spec machine. Aspect ratio wide 16 by 9. Restart shaders, display gamma, and gamma brightness are all fine on their default settings, but if you're having trouble seeing some of the darker items, you might want to adjust your gamma. NVIDIA Reflex Low Latency will set this to on. This will give you lower input latency on your inputs. You could also consider on boost if you have the GPU that can handle it. Sustainability, VSync gameplay set to off. Now, normally I would say set this to 100%, but we don't notice a lot of screen tearing with it off, so just leave it off. It will give you the highest frame rate you possibly can get. VSync menus, you can turn that off. Custom frame rate limit, set that to unlimited. Reduce quality when inactive, 10 minutes. Focus mode, 90, and HDR off. Okay, jumping over to quality. Global quality, graphics preset, custom obviously, render resolution 2560 by 1440 or 1080 if you set it to 1080, set that to 100. Dynamic resolution off, upscaling. Every single recommendation we saw online said use Fidelity FX CAS. Make absolutely sure frame generation is off. This will negatively impact your performance if it's left on. VRAM scale target 80 and set VRS to off. Details and textures. Texture resolution low, texture filter anisotropic set to low, depth of field off, detail quality normal, particle resolution low, bullet impacts off. You could set it to on if you want, that doesn't really impact anything. Persistent effects off, shader quality low, on-demand texture streaming minimal, and local texture streaming quality normal. Jumping over to shadows and lighting, shadow quality very low, screen space shadows off, occlusion and screen space lighting off, screen space reflections off, and static reflection quality low. Environment tessellation near, volumetric quality low, deferred physics quality off, weather grid volumes low, and water quality off. Now, all of those recommendations are strictly to give you the most FPS possible, and that means a faster response time for your game. Let's go over to view, accessibility solutions, motion reduction preset off, arachnophobia mode off if you don't like spiders. FOV, this one's my preference. I always max out FOV, but I have seen people like 115. ADS FOV affected, weapon FOV wide, third person FOV 90, vehicle FOV, leave that default. Camera, very important. Turn motion blur off for world, turn motion blur off for weapon motion blur. First person camera movement, least 50%. Third person camera movement, least 50%. Third person ADS transition, third person ADS. And you can set inverted flashbang on or off. If you set it on, basically your screen doesn't go all white. And as somebody who plays in the dark, I do prefer it off. Okay, let's talk about console settings real quick. On console, one of the first things you'll want to do is turn on the highest frame rate option available. If your TV has it, make sure game mode is turned on and go into your console settings and make sure 120 Hz is turned on. On Xbox, you'll want to go to settings, TV and display options, and reset your refresh rate to 120 Hz. On PlayStation, you'll want to go to settings, screen and video output, and set 120 Hz output to auto. Then in-game, you'll want to go to Graphics, Display, and turn on the 120 Hz refresh rate. Make sure that is selected. This will give you a much smoother experience and reduce your input delay. Adjust your gamma and brightness if needed. Under Quality, be sure that you turn Motion Blur off and Weapon Motion Blur off. Depth of Field off. Fidelity CAS, turn that on if it's available, and you can leave it at 50. And On-Demand Texture Streaming, set that to Minimal. Under View, you want Motion Reduction Preset off. You want Arachnophobia Mode off. Field of View, you want 120. Adjusting your FOV is of course optional. Set it to however you like it. FOV, for those who don't know, will allow you to see more of the screen, meaning you get a little bit more information as to what is happening on the battlefield. Weapon Field of View, you want to set to Wide. And under Camera, you want to set First Person to least 50, Third Person to least 50, and you can choose to turn Inverted Flashbang on or off. On controller, there are a few important settings to consider adjusting. Some players prefer to turn Vibrate off as it's a little bit of a distraction, but a very important feature brought to our attention by Lightsfire over on Twitter is Sprint Assist. Make sure Sprint Assist is set to On and not Tactical Sprint Assist. This, in conjunction with aiming advanced settings being adjusted to ADS sensitivity transition timing instant, third person ADS correction type to assist, and aim response curve type to dynamic, will actually improve how well you aim down sights while running and gunning. In addition, be sure to go to controller and go all the way down to dead zone inputs and get into the advanced settings. Set left stick min to 0, left stick max to 65, right stick min to 0, right stick max to 100, left trigger to 0, and right trigger to 0. What this is doing is setting it so that you need the least amount of input possible to trigger a reaction from your controller. Slide maintain sprint and sprint restore are set to on by default. You should leave those on. One very important setting that you don't want to miss are your interface settings. This is true for console and PC. On PC under telemetry, you can turn on your frame rate if you'd like to see that in game, or on console if you want to know your server latency, you can also turn that on under telemetry. But one of the most important items are under readability. Go into your color customization and change any of the colors to your liking. For me specifically, I am colorblind. I cannot see the color red very well, so I changed enemy color to purple. This helped me tremendously. In addition to that, set your color filter to filter 2, set filter target to both, and crank everything up to 100. This will make the game look much more vibrant. And last but not least, be sure to go into your gameplay HUD and set your minimap shape to square. This will actually allow you to see just a little bit more of the map, and it may just give you a little bit of an edge in PvP. And those were the best settings we saw online and some of the ones that we ended up tweaking ourselves. Did we miss any? Let us know in the comments below so people can get the best gameplay experience they possibly can. Thanks so much for watching, and for more on Call of Duty Black Ops 6, keep it right here on IGN.